CO2 emissions are still rising instead of falling. And that's why we launched Cycling Culture about 2 years ago, to get the cycling industry to understand that they too have more of a responsibility to cut CO2 emissions in the industry, next to getting more people on bikes to reduce transport emissions. So in 2 years' time, we've been able to motivate the cycling industry to start talking about the subject, so raise awareness. We've been hosting a lot of online meetups where we had people from, I think, maybe a couple of hundred different companies from all over the world joining us to learn, to share experience and to connect with each other to see how the cycling industry can become a more sustainable industry itself. And one of the most, I think, important things that we've been able to is get a group of CEOs together who together learned as well, but also said that we need to come into an action mode. And they set up this climate commitment in which they said we are going to measure and report on our CO2 emissions, make a reduction plan, how we can reduce them by 55% in 2030. And the most important thing is invite their supply chain to sign the letter too. And in the last year, we've had over 80 CEOs in the cycling industry sign this climate commitment, most of them making their first steps into getting an understanding of their impact on the climate through CO2 emissions in their own industry. The cycling industry has always been telling itself the bike is the sustainable alternative to the car. And of course that is true, and we should really try to get as many people riding bikes as possible. But we seem to forget that a lot of bikes are more like toys. We never use them to replace cars, or we even use our cars to ride to the trailhead to go mountain biking, for example. So the cycling industry has never taken any action on climate change until a few years ago. And just like any other industry, if we want to make sure that the CO2 emissions actually go down, it is up to the industry to make a change. So the cycling industry too has to take its responsibility. If we want to provide clean transport, we also need to provide clean products. When we started circular cycling 5 years ago, we felt really lonely on the subject. Right? There was no brands talking about sustainability. There was hardly any media writing about this subject. In the last couple of years, since we started Shift and we released the book, and there's been a lot of other initiatives going on, so we can't take credit for all of this, of course, but we see that a lot more companies are taking up this subject. And I think the beauty of the cycling industry is that most people are very much related to the outdoors and know that sustainability is important for their planet and are very keen to make this a core part of their working life. So I'm really surprised to see that in just 2 years' time, so many companies have stepped up their efforts, are starting to work on sustainable products, that we see media writing way more articles about this subject than ever before. So a lot has changed in just 2 years' time, and that makes me very optimistic that this industry can become one of the leaders instead of one of the laggards when it comes to sustainable production. The most important thing when it comes to becoming a more sustainable industry is really think about the longevity of our products and what happens at the end of the life of our products. So the industry has become just like any other what's called linear economic systems, focused on selling as many products as possible and try to sell them as fast as possible. And the sooner a user needs a new product, the better it is, because it gives us the opportunity to sell another product. The result is that we cause a lot of waste. We make a lot of high-tech materials, steel, aluminium, carbon fiber, just some examples, that require a lot of fossil fuels to make and require a lot of resources to make. But the longevity of our products is actually decreasing instead of increasing. So we need more and more and more products. And that's exactly what we need to change. So we need to change the way we design our products. We should look at making sure that they last very long, that they are compatible and upgradable. So if you need a new part, a new replacement part for your shifter, for example, that they are actually available. And they should be made from the right materials. So if we want to transition from our linear economic system to a circular economic system, and the circular economic system basically says we do not use any virgin materials anymore, we do not cause any pollution anywhere in the life cycle, and we cause no waste. And we've got three things to cover. First is, where do we get our materials from? So they should be renewable, meaning from either recycled sources or bio-based sources. Second is, stop causing any pollution anywhere in the life cycle. Well, this is not something the cycling industry can do on its own now. We will still have transport emissions related to shipping from Asia to Europe, for example, but definitely worth focusing on. And the most important thing is probably look at waste at the end of the lifetime. So how can you design a product now to make sure that at the end of the lifetime, this product can be reused, remanufactured, refurbished, or recycled, or even brought back into the biosphere. Bike shops should not only be the place where you buy your bike and the bike will never come back, but at the end of the lifetime, ideally they come back to the bike shop and from there back to the manufacturer, so a bike can become another bike in the future.